Welcome to Conversations with Dr Libby. It is such a joy to be here and to bring these conversations to life. I have wanted to do this for such a long time. There are three pillars to my work: biochemistry, nutrition, and emotions, or you could say mindset. So I look at absolutely everything through those three lenses, and through these conversations, we're going to apply those lenses to lots of different topics. But for this first series, it's all about iron. Sometimes these conversations will simply be me having a chat with you, and then other times I'll invite other people who are experts in their fields onto the couch to have what I hope are some really insightful conversations that bring immense benefits to your world. But either way, I hope these conversations deepen your appreciation of your extraordinary earth suit, because after all, we look after what we care about. This episode is all about the incredible importance of iron for athletic training, and to bring these themes to life, I am very delighted to introduce you to a very special guest, Lana Van Hout. So Lana's background, she is an athlete, she's also a coach, she's a model, and she also has the gift right now of being 22 weeks pregnant. So there'll be all sorts of themes related to Lana's extraordinary life experience to this point. We'll be bringing all of that to life, and I hope you find all of this conversation incredibly useful. So welcome, Lana. Thank you so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here with you today.
Thank you. So we'll dive straight in, Lana. Yeah. Can you share, have you had an experience with actually being iron deficient?
I have. It was about 5 years ago now. It sort of coincided with I'd stepped up my training a bit. So I was running 100 Ks a week, which is quite a lot.
That's a lot. That blows my mind.
Yeah, it blows mine sometimes as well. And I sort of thought, am I just tired because I've increased my training? Is this just normal? Is this just regular exhaustion? But I found myself that I'd go for a run and my legs would feel heavy. Even no matter how easy I was running, I just felt very lethargic. I'd wake up in the morning, I was still exhausted. I'd get home from a run and I would be sitting on the sofa or sitting on the ground, just like building up the energy to be able to go have a shower, because I was just so knackered. So it got to that point where I was like, I actually can't carry on with other everyday activities. So I need to go get this looked at. What's going on? I don't know. And so I went to my GP and he suggested an iron test. And yeah, I came back with low ferritin levels.
Yeah. Do you remember how low they were?
I think it was 17.
Yeah, that's very low. So because the normal range for adult women in New Zealand is 20 to 220 micrograms per litre. So yeah.
It's such a big range.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. And we'll get into more detail about that probably later in the chat. So you were very fortunate. Well, you were really smart to go and have it tested first of all. And then, so how was it treated, or how did you start to recover the levels?
So it definitely wasn't an overnight thing. Like, it took a while to feel back to my normal self. I'd say it probably took a month. I didn't receive an iron infusion. I don't know what level that would be, that they would do that, but I was just prescribed iron tablets and took those every day, and slowly but surely returned to feeling like my normal self again.
And that's great. And how did you feel that it sort of impacted, I guess, your training? So once you were in that really depleted state and then trying to come back from it, did you notice that, your performance and your training was sort of still suffering until it did climb higher?
Absolutely. Like, it was definitely really hard. Like, everything just felt hard. Easy runs felt hard. Usually you'd be like a conversational pace, but you'd be running on the flat and it felt like your quads were like full of lead. Like, you just felt like you had no energy at all. If I was doing workouts, my performance, like, I wouldn't be able to hit the splits that I once would be able to. And so I think it was that thing at first. I was just like, is this just normal exhaustion? Like, and you just sort of question yourself and you're like, oh, maybe it's because I've also increased my mileage, and that makes sense why I'm this tired. But then as time went on, you go, this is not normal. I can't keep up with my training. And
And I think too, it's really easy to, sort of blame things on just a really busy life, on modern life. 100%. And then if you add to that the level of training that you're doing, and I guess you had a familiarity with how capable your body actually is. Whereas for people, I think if they're not training to the level you are, they just sort of creep into iron deficiency. And it's this, as you described, it's you wake up from a sleep and you don't feel like you've recovered. But it's almost as if training gives you a really kind of clear marker, because you're used to being able to perform at a level that you know, that you're familiar with, and then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, it's gradual, isn't it? You can't do that. One of the first things I noticed about you was your gorgeous, luscious hair. Did you notice any sort of physical changes to what I refer to as the beauty bits, sort of skin, hair, nails, anything like that?
Absolutely.
Oh.
My nails were like just constantly breaking. So like I had to constantly just keep them super, super short, which I do anyway, but it was just like even then they'd still be like just catching all the time. My hair, I feel like I noticed some hair loss as well as breakage. I felt like my hair, just everything, my body just was not happy. And there were definite physical symptoms that you could see as well. Yeah.
It's fascinating to me, the hair loss picture, because all sorts of things can obviously drive hair loss.
Yeah.
But I do find that for some people, it's not in your case, but for some people it's the motivating factor to actually go and work out what's happening, because the hair's getting thinner, there's just so much on the floor. So, and the way we know it's related to iron, the part actually gets wider. So yeah.
Interesting.
It is. It's fascinating, and people start to notice it in photos of themselves, and suddenly they're like, "Oh, what's going on?" So that'll often prompt, I think, a blood test.
Intriguing.
But you were onto it pretty early, by the sounds of it, with the changes in your training and recovery.
Yeah, I think it still took me a little while to take that leap to be like, okay, I will go see my GP. I think it did still take a few months, but I got there in the end.
Yeah, so good. So great. And so great that it recovered.
Yeah.
And then with, this incredible gift of you being pregnant, are you monitoring your iron levels through pregnancy?
When I first found out I was pregnant, they did a blood test.
Yes.
And so that was all good.
Terrific.
Yeah. And I'm due to have another one in a few weeks' time, I think, just to see how it's progressing, and hopefully it's still really good. Yeah. But obviously it's also hard because you still are kind of fatigued when you're pregnant. So you do you can't help but be like, is my iron okay? Is it not? Or is this just a pregnancy symptom of feeling tired and exhausted?
And it's where the blood tests are so invaluable. So how wonderful that you've had the support to have a test at the start and then another one coming up really soon. So that, if it has dropped, you can address it, but hopefully it hasn't. So
fingers crossed.
So great. So it's fascinating to me, the reasons, I guess, people become iron deficient. And we so often want to, I think, attribute it to maybe poor absorption or, of course, training, but training actually increases our demands for iron, especially for amazing humans who train the way you do. So as adult women across the menstruation years, we need 18 milligrams of iron per day, which is, a huge amount. When we're pregnant, we need 27 milligrams of iron per day. So because you've got to imagine that you're doing the extraordinary job of creating an entire new blood supply for a brand new human. It's such a mind-blowing concept, isn't it?
It sure is, yeah.
And so for adult female athletes needing 18 milligrams of iron per day, we actually need to multiply that RDI by between 1.3 and 1.7, depending on the level of training. And I don't know if that's, I guess, well known enough or talked about enough in, I guess, particularly running circles, because for endurance runners especially. So, if you're doing 100 kilometres per week, which again, just let me take my hat off to you, that's not something I've ever done. So we would multiply the RDI by 1.7, which means daily requirements are around 30 milligrams per day. Okay. Yeah. So it's kind of it's a fairly big number, and yes, I'm very much a food first approach kind of person. So I don't think we can have a lousy way of eating and just, expect to override that with other tricks. But it is often a scenario where supplementation is actually required to meet those needs. It can be really hard to eat that much iron in a day, I think, even if you're training. So is it something that you think about, iron in food?
I have, and especially recently, I've definitely stepped up how much red meat I'm having, but the thing is you don't have red meat every day, and so you're still not necessarily getting that daily requirement that you're talking about. Yeah. So I think probably I need to look at it a little bit, even myself, at the nutritional information on some food and just be like, maybe I could be better. But that's really interesting about it is more that you need when you're an athlete and you're not, that blows my mind. Yeah,
and there are some really distinct reasons for that. So obviously oxygen delivery is a big part of it. So the iron turnover is greater in a particularly an endurance athlete. Yeah. So the way I love people to imagine it is the body is making 2.5 million brand new red blood cells every second, which is extraordinary. And we need iron for all of those. And those red blood cells are the little superstars who deliver oxygen to all of your cells and tissues. So I get people to imagine a cell is just a circle, like someone took a pencil and drew a circle, and inside the cell is a city, its own little city, and there's 50 trillion little tiny cities that make up our physical structure. And inside each cell, they're doing building work and construction work, and then if we don't use certain structures we build, they'll pull it all, the little bits inside can pull it all apart. And it's but every single city, every cell needs oxygen to be delivered. So as a runner, that oxygen requirement and delivery of oxygen to cells and tissues is even greater. So that's one reason. And another one, though, is we do lose some iron through perspiration. So when you're sweating, on a run, there's some iron loss there. And then also there's a thing called foot strike hemolysis.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about this. I heard about this a few years ago, and I was just so intrigued by it, and also wanted to know how, is it actually?
It's a thing.
A really big thing.
Yeah,
wow,
it's a thing.
Yeah.
So when, especially if we're running on sort of hard concrete or tarred roads, when our heel strikes the ground, it can actually break open the red blood cells.
Wow.
And and so that can be a source of iron loss for the body. So again, it's just another reason why the requirements for athletes are a little bit greater. Sometimes, and this is very extreme, and I only bring this to the conversation for people listening who might sort of be super extreme in their activity. I'm not suggesting for a second it's you, but there can be little microscopic bleeds as well from the urinary tract and the digestive system. And you won't necessarily know it, you won't see the blood, but it can just from irritation. So there's all sorts of ways we can lose iron, but it's fine. Like, do the training, do the thing that lifts your spirits and spins your tires and makes, the sense of achievement, I imagine, must be extraordinary.
It sure is.
But it's just making sure that your earth suit is getting everything that it needs. So, and iron is obviously a big part of that. So Lana, one of the many hats you wear is as a coach to other runners. Can you talk to us about that and your life as a coach?
Yeah. So I coach people one-on-one, but I've also been a distance coach at high school. Oh. I did that for about 3 or 4 years. So I was working really closely with young girls, and that was really, really amazing. And I got a lot of enjoyment out of that. But it also came with obviously challenges in the sense of that you really need to look after who you're training and making sure that they're not overtraining, especially when they're going through puberty and all those things as well. And also under fueling, getting tired. There's so many demands on young girls with school and puberty, and so just making sure that I really care for them. And so some of the ways that I think the things I've looked out for is obviously to make sure that I get to know who I'm training, because then you can really see a change. And if someone's moods are different, if they're talking less in a certain situation, okay, maybe something's up. Are they getting injured frequently? Have they got a regular menstrual cycle? I've had girls that are celiac, so even with that, they're not absorbing the nutrients the same as other people, so we have to be a bit more cautious. And also just making sure that they're recovering. That whole heavy leg thing again is like, if you're going for an easy run and you've got that really heavy leg feeling over and over again, it's not necessarily a great sign. That's
so wonderful to hear, almost like a list of symptoms that you're looking out for in the people you train. And it's so important, isn't it?
It sure is.
Because they won't necessarily know that it could be iron deficiency leading them to feel that way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time too, it can lead to fatigue issues, especially with training. A lot of young girls they want to be the best they can be, which I get. They want to be high performing. Sometimes they've got goals to go to colleges, but it means that they push themselves so hard when in the scheme of things, they do have a long running career, but it's really hard to not feel those pressures. And there's still those pressures. I think it's changing of looking a certain way. And if you're lean, you're going to run faster. But I think a lot of people now are learning that, no, actually being strong and fueling yourself right, it means you can recover better. You're stronger, you can run faster. It's just helping to support them on the way.
It's a joy for me to hear you say that you feel that narrative is changing somewhat. Yeah. It's exciting, isn't it, to have girls grow up with this idea of, being strong, not skinny.
100%. And I think in a way it actually inspires me, because you're listening to these girls and they're having these conversations themselves within a group. They're talking about their menstrual cycles. Like when I went to school, no one talked about their menstrual cycle. It was like hush, hush. No one talks about that. But now it's, it's just like talking about the weather. It's not a big deal. Yeah. We all have it. And just making sure that they're looking after themselves. And some of those girls have been, hats off to them, as, they have not got their period yet, or it hasn't been regular, and they've taken themselves out of running. They've taken themselves out of sport. They've had a break and gone, you know what, I need to put my body first. So I've been lucky to be surrounded by some incredible young ladies.
Well, they're lucky to have you as well, and watching out for them. And it was a beautiful thing you said, that you get to know them. So you get to know their own unique personality, their character. So then you're able to observe changes. And I think that's key, isn't it? Because obviously some people are just naturally quiet, whereas others are really gregarious. And then if they go quiet, it's a bit of a sign that there's something up and worth investigating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you're gorgeous with that personal touch. But too, the general under eating and the general under fueling, I'm of course really focused on iron right now, but there's also of course that concern that there's just not enough fuel in the tank. There's not enough energy, not enough calories essentially going in to meet the demands of a training schedule, particularly for someone with a mindset of wanting to be the best and pursuing, that excellence. And I love that it's filtering over into, changes with food, rather than it being that real restrictive mindset. It's, how do I eat to perform at my best? Because I've worked one-on-one with people for such a long time, I've met very few women in my working life who, when I ask them to describe their relationship with food, it's very rarely I eat for robust health and energy, or I eat for robust performance. It's so often been related to, very sadly, controlling body shape and size, and it's very difficult to have extraordinary levels of health when you're restricting in some way. So it's teenage girls could change the world. They're a force for good in the world, aren't they?
They sure are. Very inspiring.
Do you think one of the challenges facing an athlete is that they feel when they do get tired, they might think, I just need to train harder, rather than thinking maybe there's something up, maybe it is under fueling, I'm not eating enough, or maybe it is iron deficiency. Do you think a lot of people try to sort of override it with a mental strength?
I think definitely. I think sometimes when especially if you're training for a specific race, whether it's a half marathon or a marathon, and especially if it's your first time, you just think this is just normal exhaustion. Of course I'm tired. Of course I'm running some distances I've never done before, or, this is just part of being an athlete or a runner. And I think sometimes as well, the competitive side comes out. I know myself, years and years ago, I never wanted to miss a training. And even if I was tired, I'd be like, no, if you just get through this run, you'll be fine. Now, with experience and age, I don't take it that seriously anymore. As in, I just go, a day off isn't going to hurt in the scheme of things. It's better to put yourself first, let your body recover. Recovery will help you get faster and stronger, and your body needs it. You spend so much time out there literally pounding the pavement and you need to give your body time to recover and actually rest.
Such wisdom, hey, that we don't always have in our younger years. But
not at all.
It's so important. The body doesn't have a voice. It just has symptoms. It just gives us feedback, doesn't it? And it's asking us to pay attention. And I think too, it's beautiful how you said, a day off it's not the end of the world. It's not going to ruin all the other wonderful things that you're doing. So how would you talk to an athlete who is you can see that they need to either do a bit less training, or they might need to get their iron tested and they're resistant to kind of making any sort of changes to that? They just feel that they've got to keep going hard. How would you approach someone who you think needs a little bit more support or more rest or some testing done?
Firstly, I would definitely pull them aside. So I wouldn't do it in a group setting. I would make sure it was one-on-one, and taking an approach that's very caring. And it is when you're training hard and you're running lots, it is your life. And so to ask someone to step back from that and to maybe not do as much, it can feel like the end of the world. It really can for some athletes. And so I think it's really making sure that you look at the big picture, not just, but I've got a race in a month's time. It's going, okay, you want to be able to run for years. You want your body to be strong. You want your body to have the energy. You want your body to be able to cope with other things in everyday life. And so it's really important to put yourself first, put your health first, and just go and get a blood test and see what's going on, because it's just going to get harder and harder, especially if you're already really exhausted. And there are, like, I've definitely seen that you can see it when someone is, low in iron or not coping with the training load. It's, the performance isn't the same. They're not recovering. They come to training and they need longer to warm up, or they just don't feel like they've warmed up. They just don't feel ready, to go. So I think it's that thing, eventually you do start to realize, like, I'm not hitting my splits, or I'll have a race and I used to be able to finish here or do this time, and then now I'm here. Like, what's going on? And you could be doing absolutely everything right. You could be doing all the right training, but your body's not coping, and your body is shouting out, really, to listen and to take it a little bit easier. And
it could be REDS, I guess, not having enough actual total food. It can be iron deficiency, and it's the testing really is the only way to sort of know, I guess, isn't it? And I suppose if you sort of start, if people are kind of listening to this and thinking, I've been suspicious that I'm just not eating enough total fuel, that's such a great place to start. And then, the way obviously to know if it is iron deficiency is that blood test. So, yeah, but it's lovely, isn't it, to do it in a really quiet and respectful way. And I hear you when you say it can feel that, if someone needs to train less, it can feel that their most favourite thing in the universe is being taken away from them. Yeah, absolutely. And that's really uncomfortable. There are times when I wrote a book back in 2011 called Rushing Woman Syndrome, and it talks about the effect of stress on all sorts of things inside of us. And I would occasionally, not that often, but I would occasionally ask someone to take a break from drinking coffee. Yeah. And sometimes that feels like the end of the world. But I can imagine for a runner, because I imagine it's the best feeling in the universe. Yeah. That to be asked to do less of that, to give their body a break or time to recover, it can be just so confronting.
Yeah, it really is. And it is a real struggle for people to be told, no, you need to do less, when all they want to do is be the best they can be.
Yeah, and that's so understandable. So when someone gets a blood test for iron, there are 4 iron parameters that I firstly like to look at. It's all grouped together. They're called iron studies. So serum iron looks at how much iron is actually in the blood, and that's a great reflection of dietary intake, recent dietary intake or supplementation. And then there's another parameter called transferrin, and that goes high in iron deficiency or iron deficiency anemia, and that can be confusing to people. And I'm just sharing this because if, an athlete gets a blood test back, they can have a look and see what's happening for them. So when you think, I had a blood test for iron, but the transferrin's high, that's really confusing. But transferrin is actually a taxi that drives iron around. So the body makes more taxis trying to pick up more passengers. The passengers obviously are the iron. And so the normal range for adult women in New Zealand for transferrin is 2 to 3.6 grams per litre. But particular for the general population, but even more so for an athlete, once that transferrin gets above about 2.5, 2.6, for me, that's a sign that the body is seeking more iron. So I call it iron hunger. The body's it's desperately looking for more iron to do all the crucial work that it's needed for. So even though that number, that 2.6, is still inside that normal range, I think it's really good to not just know normal ranges, but to also know optimal ranges, and it can that alone can give someone an edge on their performance. Then the next test is transferrin saturation, so that's how many passengers, how much iron is actually in the taxis, and then ferritin, which was what we mentioned earlier, with that it's iron storage in the body, and that's like your backup battery. So when you are doing lots of training, when you're in a real consistent training regime, and especially if it is big, long distances, you need a really decent backup battery. So that normal range of 20 to 220 micrograms per litre, as you said earlier, it's such a crazy large, broad normal range. So for an athlete, you want that at a minimum of 50, but a lot of athletes will perform better when it's more like 80 or even 100, depending on the training. So you've just got so much there in the tank to be able to be pulled out of storage so that you can access it for everything it's needed for.
That's interesting, because even when I wasn't low, like as in I was within the normal range, when I'm training, like usually not when I'm not pregnant, doing 80 to 100 Ks, it was always sitting around like 30 to 35. So that's still like, although it's in the normal range, that's still low by what yours, like the numbers you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really wish that optimal range for ferritin sat on blood test bits of paper on the actual results between 50 and 150.
Yeah.
And so that the once it goes below 50, I think it's really wise for people to be supported with their iron. Yeah, so that you've got it there. And even more so for athletes because of that increased iron turnover that we talked about for all those reasons, with the increased oxygen delivery, with the foot strike hemolysis, and the loss of iron through sweat. So a solid backup battery I think is really important. Another marker I think that's really helpful for athletes is called CRP, which is C-reactive protein, and it's a marker of inflammation. So inflammation in general can actually block iron absorption. So there's a little protein that the liver makes and it's called hepcidin, and I like people to think of it almost like a bouncer at the stadium. So it's saying whether the people can come in or not. It says whether the iron can come in or not. Yeah. And hepcidin increases about 3 hours after exercise. So if someone is really focused on improving their dietary iron intake or they're taking an iron supplement, it's really important to do that before training. Also too, if you have a blood test, about 24 hours without training is actually really important, because inflammation doesn't just block iron absorption, but it can falsely elevate ferritin. So if you go for a run and then 4 hours later get a blood test for iron, your ferritin will look better than it actually is.
That's good to know.
Yeah. The timing is everything. Hepcidin is also naturally higher in the afternoon. So iron supplements are definitely best taken in the morning, but we have to be a little bit mindful of, you don't want to have them with tea and coffee, because there's substances in tea and coffee that can block the iron absorption. So I just share that because sometimes just little tips and tricks can make the difference with our ability to absorb it. And if someone is, putting the time into changing their dietary focus with iron or taking a supplement, you want to get the most out of it, obviously.
Yeah. And obviously with all those, so if you went to your GP and you're like, I want to get my iron tested, like usually I feel like they just do the ferritin level, they don't do the 4 that you've said. And then, so should we be asking for,
yes,
actually everything?
Yes, I would encourage you to. And I think part of it is advocating for ourselves and finding the language, I guess, to have just a really open conversation with our GP. Poor GPs are just under the pump. They're under a lot of time pressure and a lot of pressure to support people. So I'm not putting them down for a second, but having an open conversation about how important it is, particularly for an endurance athlete, and to be not just for their performance, but also, for their general well-being. And we do need a broader picture to get a much more accurate reflection of what's going on. And if, for example, an athlete makes a big focus on improving their iron status and it's unresponsive, some more extensive blood tests can shine a wonderful light on what's actually happening. And I very much encourage people to pursue it and get to the heart of it if they are struggling to absorb it. So because it can make such a difference.
Yeah, definitely.
I wondered too, Lana, if there's a mindset with athletes that, if they need a bit of extra help or attention or support or even testing, do you think there's a tendency that people feel weak? Because it's not weak to ask for help or to get more insight, but do you think that's a bit of a challenge?
I think it comes as a challenge is because we never really want to step away from our training. And so you always want to think that nothing's going to hold you back, and that I think you almost wait till the very last minute when you're really, really, really exhausted, when you could have probably done something a bit more if you'd thought about it earlier. I think you always kind of leave it to the last minute. And it's the same even with injuries and things like that. A lot of the time you don't want to think that something's going to take you out of your training schedule. So you almost put it on the back seat and you go, I'm not going to deal with that yet. I'm sure I'll be fine. I'm sure I'm going to come right. And you think that, it could just be a week of bad training and I'm just tired, I'm exhausted, and it will come right. And I haven't been sleeping that well. So maybe that's why. But it definitely is that thing. I think you never want to step back from your training, but sometimes you have to. And your body needs you to listen. It's screaming for you to listen. But it's really hard when you've got that. I think it's that whole competitive mindset. It's also a lot of the time it's very, you want to be the best you can be. And
And I think too, sometimes it's hard, isn't it, when a little short-term shift could give you a lot of long-term gain, but it's hard to kind of, I guess, think about that in the moment. All you're thinking about is, what do you mean I can't do my training tomorrow?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, like with runners, you always have a schedule. You always have a race schedule. You're always like, I've got this race coming and then I've got this race coming. And some of those races could be, you know, you might be doing a 10K time trial or a 10K race before a half marathon that you're training for. So it's everything's all ready for the season ahead. And so to think that you're going to break from that, it's going to affect your performance. And if I don't do this race, then that's going to affect my next race. And so I think it is that thing. It's just having a little bit more flexibility and going and seeing the bigger picture once again, and not just being caught up in that one race. There'll always be another race.
So one of the things you beautifully touched on was when you were iron deficient, you did start to focus on eating more iron-rich foods, you know, things like red meat. Offal is another source that not a lot of people are that keen on.
Sounds lovely.
Not that fun. But of course, you know, mussels and sardines and eggs. And then there's also some iron in things like seaweed and parsley and leafy green vegetables, especially kale. So iron is widely spread throughout lots of food, but we need copper as well for really healthy iron metabolism. And it's another little trick, I guess, that I really want athletes to be aware of is once iron gets inside the cells that line the digestive system, we need an enzyme that's completely dependent on copper to actually get it to where it needs to go. This is iron from our food. Yeah. And so good. I worry sometimes that people have not necessarily a copper deficiency, but not enough what we call bioavailable copper. So it's in shellfish, it's in dark chocolate and cashews and sesame seeds. So yeah, there's a bit of fun
dark
in
chocolate,
there.
I like the sound of that one.
Your face lit up, it's so cute. So there's some copper in there, so that's really helpful for iron metabolism. And then vitamin A is also really important. And vitamin A is, again, block your ears, in the offal. It's
yummy.
Nummy. It's in whole fish, it's in butter, and it's also in eggs. And so when I was talking about the backup battery, so your ferritin iron stores, to be able to put iron into storage, we need copper, and to then be able to pull iron out of storage, we need vitamin A. So again, for performance, yes, iron is crucial, but those nutrient cofactors are just as important because you've got to be able to move iron around the body to where it actually needs to go, and particularly to make it available to be popped into the red blood cells. That means the iron's got to be sent to the bone marrow to be inserted into the red blood cells. And so copper and vitamin A are just as important as there being enough iron. And I'm just so keen for people from all walks of life to really understand all of this, because iron is the most common nutritional deficiency in the world. And when you think about, I think it's just such an extraordinary gift that we get an earth suit, that we get to be here and, you know, have this experience in a human body. It blows my mind. And, you know, whether it is athletic performance, whether it's learning, sharing, educating, contributing, whatever it is that really spins your tires in life, when we give our earth suit what it requires, it looks after us kind of back. And so to bring these conversations to life, especially for athletes with their pursuit of excellence, is really exciting for me. So thank you.
And it's really interesting because I'd never heard of that. All I hear about is making sure you have vitamin C when you take your iron. Like, I didn't know that there was other things as well that, you know, that we should be taking and making sure that we're ingesting and those foods. So I'll definitely be having some dark chocolate.
Love that for you. And so for some people, obviously, you know, a food first approach is fantastic, but not everyone, especially athletes, not everybody gets what they need from their food, and it's where supplementation can be really helpful. And there are some really old school supplements that cause a whole host of side effects, and that constipation especially, and it can be really off-putting. And one of the reasons when we have those old school supplements, it's iron bound to what's called a salt or a chelate. And when we swallow that, the stomach acid pulls those two things apart. It's supposed to, but then that creates what's called free iron. And then the free iron is delivered to the gut cell, and it has to hop on the back of a truck to get inside the gut cell. But once it's inside the gut cell, it floods that gut cell with free iron. And that in itself can drive inflammation and oxidative stress, which no one wants, but especially athletes don't want that. And that's one of the reasons why we get the side effects from those old school supplements. But also too, with those old school supplements, the iron is still inside the gut cell in the way I've just described that, and to actually get to the blood where it needs to get to do all the magic things it does for you, for your performance, we need a copper dependent enzyme to actually get it out of the gut. So I worry very much when an athlete finds out that they're iron deficient and goes on to one of those old school supplements, that they don't necessarily get the outcome. Sometimes blood tests don't improve, or they might only move the needle by, say, four little units, which just feels like this massive uphill battle of how am I going to recover this. So, and it's where there's a whole new generation of supplements that are being made from, it's ferritin iron that's been sourced from organic peas, and it has its own unique absorption mechanism. So ferritin is a little protein cage, and then inside that protein cage are thousands of molecules of iron. And when we get the ferritin iron and we swallow that, the stomach acid doesn't break it down, and it's delivered straight to the gut cells, and the little gut cells can just grab that whole ball, the whole ferritin little ball with all the iron inside it, and take it inside the gut cell, and the gut cell then isn't exposed to free iron, so there's not that inflammation or oxidative stress, and you also don't need the copper to get it out the back door to go where it needs to go. So it's, again, a conversation that I'm really excited to bring to life. And for full transparency, I use ferritin iron in Iconic Iron, and iron supplement that I took 8 years to develop. And I'm really thrilled with how that's going. So to help athletes with performance, that's also something I think people can keep in mind.
Yeah, no, that sounds very interesting.
And so tell me about your relationship with training now at 22 weeks pregnant. Has there been some change?
Yeah, there has been quite a bit of change. This pregnancy I've been very movement focused. So about 18 months ago, my husband and I, we were a few days off 20 weeks pregnant, and we found out our son had passed away. And so during that time, and we had a postmortem, and there was no cause that was identified for why it happened. I obviously had been training, but nowhere near as much. Like, a lot of the time I would have a week off because I just felt so sick. Or I was running maybe 3 or 4 times a week, and I'd been given permission and guidance that it was all okay because I'd done it for most of my life. So there was no relation, and it's definitely didn't have any impact on the pregnancy. But for this pregnancy, I've just wanted to be able to control some parts of it, because obviously you can't really control anything. Whatever's the outcome's gonna be is it's gonna be. But I've just wanted to step back from running, just to, I think, just be really gentle on my body, and just, so it's just been walking.
Beautiful.
So nice walks outside, which has been really, really good, just even for my mental health and just with coping. And getting past that 20-week mark that was the main goal, was just to get to 20 weeks. And then now that I've got to 20 weeks, I can kind of breathe. And so now I'm doing a little bit more, like a little bit of strength training at home and some body weight stuff and light weights. But the running's is on pause for now.
Fair enough. And that's so generous of you to share your story. I did read about it, and to acknowledge Mackenzie. I think,
our boy Mackenzie.
Your boy, and the little boy who made you a mum. It's very, very, very special. And to be at 22 weeks pregnant now must just be this expansive kind of feeling, just such a beautiful relief for you.
It is. It's definitely been a challenge, and there's been a lot of it's been that whole thing of during that time from the loss of Mackenzie to now, like I got back into running, but obviously my main goal was to get pregnant again. And so you're sort of just being like, I don't want to push myself too hard or overtrain or anything like that. But now it's just really caring for this little life inside of me, and Mackenzie always will be our firstborn, and he made us a mum and dad, and I say his name with such pride, and I love saying his name.
Do you know, I felt that from when you shared that publicly, which I think is incredibly generous and very brave, and will have given so many people so much support. And when I read that, actually felt the importance of his name, which was why I wanted to say it in our conversation.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate you saying his name.
It's and I loved how you acknowledged that he made you and your husband a mum and a dad, and to have lived through that experience and the grief of that experience. And I think too, it's almost, we were talking about it earlier, and you described how there was Lana before Mackenzie, and there's Lana now, having given birth to him and him making you a mum, and the way we incorporate the grief we experience and almost transform it into a wisdom of sorts. I can hear when you speak, there's a trust in yourself, and my vibe with you is you're just such a caring person, but it's almost like if that caring could have become even deeper, that's what's happened. Yeah,
it's quite interesting, like me definitely saying there's a before and an after going through that loss, and it makes you, as much as it was the most horrible experience, it's also one of the most beautiful experiences of my life as well. And being able to, getting to meet him and hold him in the hospital. And then just even that whole grief, it just, I don't know, it makes you feel everything was just so heightened, like even just your day-to-day life and just being outside, like everything, you looked at everything differently, everything sounded different, everything, it's just this beauty that I never would have known, I guess, without. But he will forever be our little love and a big brother.
Yes.
And we're so proud of him, and I'm so grateful for an amazing husband that has been just so much support in my family as well. And but it's been the toughest journey, and it's only really gotten easier since being pregnant again.
You're an extraordinary person to allow the pain and the beauty to coexist. It's I think that part of there's so much hope in your story amongst the sadness, and I think to anyone listening having a hard time, I think it's a really beautiful thing to, I guess, open our hearts to, is that when there's pain, that beauty is still there. The sky is so bright, and for you to hear you say it was almost like everything was brighter because of Mackenzie's presence, because of his birth, and because you got to meet him, and to hear that coexists, because I think it's so easy for our brain to just focus on one thing, to just be so in the grief, and we need to be. I'm not taking away 100%. From that. We need to be, but it's to remember that the beauty is all still there. It's like the moon is always there, but the clouds sometimes go across her face. Yeah. But she's still there, so that beauty is still there, and you're living proof of that. And the way what your face does as you speak about Mackenzie and you speak about that experience is, if there's nothing more beautiful, your face, the softness in your face, and of the transformational experience that's been, though. It's But I'm so happy. I'm so happy you met him, and I'm also so sad for you that you had that experience.
Yeah, it's a really tough time, and it's been that one thing that, going through it all, is being able to talk about it is a big thing, and you feel so lonely when you're going through it, and you feel like. And so for me to be able to talk about Mackenzie and to talk about our journey and our story, if it can help one person or one, that's all that matters. And I think it's that thing. It's a lot of people go through grief and pain silently, and it's so hard. It's so hard.
And you've had beautiful support you shared, though, from your beautiful husband.
Yeah, I'm very, very lucky. My husband is a very emotional and empathetic person, and it really made me just so happy that I chose him to be my husband. And he chose me too. Yes. Because I would not have been able to get through it like I have without him. And it's just been, he's been beautiful. And so is my family too. We've been very lucky to have such beautiful support around us.
I'm so pleased because it's so important.
It is, yeah, it is.
And you did share with me that he's a bit of a superstar runner. He just did the Sydney Marathon up here.
He did the Sydney Marathon and he did amazingly. He got 24th, which is insane.
Wow. Congrats to him.
I know, it's crazy. And it's his first world major, because it was the first time the Sydney Marathon was a world major. So he was very, very stoked. He was aiming for under sub 220. He didn't quite get that, but it was still amazing.
His iron levels must be awesome.
Yeah, I think they are.
So Lana, as part of, I think, because we've been talking about pregnancy and the gift of you being 22 weeks pregnant now, nearly 23, and I touched on how we need 27 milligrams of iron each day. And just to, I guess, round back to the extraordinary capability of the human body to grow new life, and that you're creating an entire new blood supply for a brand new human. But to be able to do that, the mother's body, her blood volume increases really significantly, and it peaks, that increase in blood volume peaks between 28 and 34 weeks of pregnancy. And because the blood volume is greater, it dilutes the concentration of iron. So some women find out that they're iron deficient sort of in that third trimester of pregnancy, and it's why I am so keen for it to be monitored in all women, to make sure it stays nice and high, because we don't want to give birth in an iron deficient state. It puts the mum at greater risk of a premature birth. And again, the growing baby is so extraordinary because they accumulate. Most of the iron they're going to be born with accumulates in the third trimester of pregnancy, and then that iron that they're born with needs to last them about 6 months, because there's virtually no iron in breast milk. And if bubs are born premature, they need to be monitored for iron deficiency as well, which is a whole different conversation. But it's again, I'm just so blown away at the miracle of it all. But iron is so important, and of course, hydration and just getting enough calories going in, just eating enough total food. Which, how do you go with that? How's your appetite been with this pregnancy?
To begin with, it was not very good. I was very, the morning sickness has been terrible up until probably about 16 weeks. So it was definitely just picking and choosing what I could eat, just because of food aversions and just feeling so nauseous. And it's not, and they call it morning sickness, but it's not morning sickness. It's all day. I feel like it got worse at nighttime, and sometimes I'd wake up in the night and feel like I was going to be sick, and I'm like, what is going on? I'm definitely, now that my appetite's back, I'm definitely very, when I think of having a meal, I definitely think of it more as okay, what nutrients does my body need? What is this meal actually giving me? Not just empty calories that aren't giving me the nutrients that I need. And so obviously red meat has been a big thing that I have stepped up, and I've definitely found that I've been craving it. And even when I did feel sick, I could still eat steak, which was really weird. Because I couldn't eat chicken, I couldn't eat fish, I couldn't eat eggs, I couldn't eat other protein, but steak I could eat.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's really quite...
What a wise body you have. So Lana, as a coach, with that being a part of the work that you do you see very much burnout, or do you see people sort of teetering on the edge of burnout sometimes?
Definitely. I think it's also, a lot of the time we look at just your training schedule, but your life and what else is going on in your life impacts you so much. And so if you're going through anything, whether it's with your career or relationships or just something else in life, it's going to affect your running as well. And so I like to look at it as a big picture, and not just okay, you need to do this training. It's not that. It's supposed to be, and looking at what other training they're doing, because you don't want to give someone a running program that is just for someone that's a runner when they're doing all these other activities as well, because they're just going to be burning the candle at both ends.
And I think too, you mentioned that one of the things you look out for, particularly in younger girls, is menstrual cycle irregularities. And I know Lara Bryden so beautifully calls it sort of the monthly report card.
Yeah.
And so it gives us some, great insight into what's happening with general health. And, once that becomes highly irregular, or in some women who train really hard, it can disappear. And I think that too is a little red flag, isn't it, for some things need to potentially change. it can be caloric, it can be reds, it can be obviously iron deficiency because there's just not the blood there to lose. We can't, risk losing any more iron because it is so low. So I think that menstrual irregularity is one of the watch outs, isn't it, for burnout, and probably stress fractures. Do you find that as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of the time if someone's getting injured too frequently, like obviously if you have an accident and you roll your ankle, it's just an accident, it's just happened. But if you're finding yourself that you're getting stress fracture after stress fracture, or you're having ligament issues and you're just not recovering, then there's something to look at. There's something else going on as well. Obviously your menstrual cycle, like you said, is a really great way to know, like, okay, is my body happy? Is because if that disappears, it means that something's not right, and you could be overtraining, you could be, all those sorts of things. So, and also underfueling. I think underfueling is definitely, I feel like people are getting a little bit more, realizing that it's like your body is an engine and you want to put great food and actually replenish what you've burnt off, and all the exercise that you're doing. I think it's definitely now there's more of a focus on, okay, it's actually awesome to be strong. Yeah. It's awesome to get your period. It's awesome to have all those things. It's not about being skinny, or that I feel like it is definitely changing. So that's good.
Isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, that's the best news on the planet.
Yeah.
It's so good. Something too, just when we were talking about stress fractures, that just then, I think when people think of bones, they think very much of, calcium and magnesium, and that's all true. And just because, sorry to round back to iron, but because I am obsessed with it. No,
I love it. I'm learning so much.
It's iron is actually really, really important for bone health for 8 million thousand reasons. So iron is actually crucial for collagen production and collagen maintenance.
Wow.
And so collagen, I think lots of people think about it just for appearance and skin, but collagen is really important for the whole structure of our body, and we actually incorporate minerals into the matrix that collagen kind of allows us to hold and build as part of our structural self. Yeah. And iron is the collagen is completely reliant on iron for its formation, for its stability. So it's such an important nutrient. It's also needed for oxygen to be delivered, of course, to the bone cells. So there's bone cells that build and there's bone cells that repair, and bone is always a balance between building and breakdown, and we need obviously more build than breakdown. And when there is accelerated breakdown, iron, I don't think, is thought about enough as a potential contributor to that. So, it's often a forgotten nutrient, I think, in bone health. So with stress fractures, it's a really big part of healing, because you obviously want those bone cells to get what they need, but also that oxygen delivery. So, I think stress fractures is another little watch out for kind of that burnout-y sort of something needs to, or nutrition needs to potentially change.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting how much iron is literally, it's like the building blocks of everything. It feels like.
It actually is. Yeah. And it's part of why I'm bringing this body of work to life, is to shine a light on that, because I feel like it's been forgotten. Other nutrients have become trendier. Everyone knows about how important magnesium is, and it is. I'm not taking away from that. Of course it is. Yeah. Vitamin D, creatine, proteins, those sort of things are having their moment, and we've forgotten the most common nutritional deficiency, which is iron, and it's incredibly prevalent in athlete populations, and it obviously doesn't just affect general well-being, it affects performance. And when you're someone, I admire anyone in the pursuit of excellence in any area. I love it as a standard, as a pursuit. I think it's, one of the great gifts of being on the planet is to pursue something you love and that uplifts you, but to pursue it with, a really high standard and that pursuit of excellence. It's beautiful. And I can see that in you and how you live, and I can hear it in how you speak, and not just in your athletic work, but in your care for people and the people and also strangers. You have such a gorgeous way about you, and to understand, or I guess to put this information in the hands of athletes and people who work with athletes. It's a great privilege for me to have this chat with you. So I really hope that I'm so grateful for the stories you've shared around not just iron deficiency and your own experience with that, but your story about Mackenzie, your story of your pregnancy now, and all the things that make you beautiful, Lana. Yes, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope everyone who's listening has found it really useful.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful thing for you to say to me. That's very, very kind of you.
Thank you.
I've really, really enjoyed sitting down today and talking to you. I've learned a lot, and it's been really nice to be able to share my story as well. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.